In 1938, while most Americans were still clawing their way out of the Great Depression, one man quietly commissioned something so ahead of its time that the industry wouldn't catch up for another 30 years. Not a mansion, not a yacht, a vehicle. A rolling home so sophisticated, so deliberately engineered that it would still be working 5 decades after it was built. This is the story of the 1938 Vagabond, and once you hear what it survived, you'll never look at a modern RV the same way again. Before you understand the machine, you need to understand the man behind it. His name was Dr. Hubert Eaton, and he wasn't an engineer or an inventor. He was the architect of Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles, the visionary who transformed the grim concept of a cemetery into something closer to a garden estate, with manicured lawns and flush marble plaques instead of crooked headstones. By 1938, Eaton was overseeing multiple properties scattered across Southern California, and he had a problem. How do you move between a growing empire without sacrificing dignity? His answer was the Vagabond, a rolling boardroom, a mobile headquarters, and something far more ambition than anyone expected. Now here's where the story gets interesting, because the trailer attached to that tractor wasn't designed by a car maker. It came from the mind of Glenn H. Curtiss, one of the most consequential inventors of the early 20th century. Curtiss had spent years racing the Wright brothers for dominance of the sky. And when he finally turned his attention to the road, he brought every aeronautical instinct with him. The result was the Curtiss Aero Car, a trailer with a smooth, riveted aluminum body shaped like an aircraft fuselage, designed not to look fast, but to actually be fast. Aerodynamic efficiency wasn't marketing language for Curtiss. It was engineering doctrine. But the outside was only half the story. What Curtiss put inside that aluminum shell was something most homes in 1938 didn't even have. And what was built on the roof, a detail almost nobody talks about, changed how passengers experienced the road entirely. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what was pulling it. Standard Carriage Works of Los Angeles built the tractor from scratch. It was not modified from a production vehicle or adapted from a fleet truck. Built from scratch. The cab-over layout was deliberately chosen to reduce the overall length of the combination while maximizing interior space. Art Deco pontoon fenders, a design element almost never seen on commercial trucks, gave it an imposing ceremonial presence. A separate 4-cylinder auxiliary engine was installed purely to power the onboard electrical systems. In 1938, this vehicle had its own dedicated generator built into the frame. Then came the engine decision that made engineers of the era genuinely stop and stare. Instead of mounting the main power plant at the front, where every truck of the 1930s kept it, the Vagabond's engineers placed a white truck-flat 12 gasoline engine at the rear of the cab. 12 cylinders produced 212 horsepower in a truck in 1938. The reasoning was pure physics. Shifting the weight rearward improved traction and reduced stress on the front axle when hauling a trailer that weighed over 10,000 pounds. The side effect was something the passengers noticed immediately. 12 cylinders produced almost no vibration. The ride was whisper smooth. And that engine didn't just perform, it endured. By the time it finally gave out, it had covered 250,000 miles of continuous heavy towing. For a gasoline engine of that era pulling that kind of weight, that number is almost incomprehensible. But when the V12 finally surrendered, Eaton didn't retire the Vagabond, he had it reborn. In 1953, a Cummins 6-cylinder diesel rated at 300 horsepower was transplanted into the rear engine bay. More torque, better fuel economy, and a longevity that would make the original engine look short-lived by comparison. That Cummins diesel entered service in 1953 and didn't stop until 1991. 38 years in continuous operation. The total active service life of the Vagabond, from the day it was completed to the day it was finally retired, was 53 years. Let that number settle for a moment. 53 years of working life for a one-of-one, custom-built machine hauling a 10,000-pound trailer across California roads. Most modern vehicles don't last 15. Now, the inside of that trailer, because this is where the Curtiss Aero car stopped being impressive and became something else entirely. Step through the door and you weren't in a camper. You were in a world, wood-paneled walls, upholstered seating for 8, a self-contained kitchen, a private restroom. And above your head, accessible from inside the trailer, a glass observation cupola mounted on the roof, complete with a speedometer, a compass, and a direct intercom line to the driver. Passengers could ride up there, watch the road unspool ahead of them, track their speed and heading, and speak directly to whoever was at the wheel. In 1938, on a public road, this wasn't luxury as a concept. This was luxury as a fully engineered system. The Vagabond also used one of the earliest fifth-wheel coupling systems ever applied to a civilian vehicle, and it was among the first combinations to run air brakes throughout the entire rig. Technology so practical, they became industry standards, invented here first. And this machine didn't sit in a showroom, it worked. For over 5 decades, the Vagabond served Forest Lawn Memorial Park as both a mobile executive office and a ceremonial transport vehicle. It crossed California roads regularly, dependably, with institutional responsibility on every mile. In its later years, Eaton had the sleeping quarters converted into executive storage and conference space, because by then the Vagabond had become less of a residence and more of a statement. A moving declaration that Forest Lawn operated at a level above the ordinary. When it finally retired in 1991, the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles took custody, and there it stayed, preserved not as a curiosity, but as a landmark of American engineering ambition until 2017, when the museum listed it for sale. The Cummins was no longer running. The vehicle was sold as is. The price was modest, and that modesty says something uncomfortable about how we value history, or fail to. But a truck mechanic got hold of it, restored the REO tractor to running condition. The trailer received careful cosmetic attention, and the Vagabond returned to public life at the 2018 AACA Fall Meet in Hershey, Pennsylvania, still turning heads, still commanding a room, still entirely unlike anything built before or since. Of the roughly 300 Aero cars ever constructed, fewer than a dozen have survived. Only 1 or 2 remain functional. The Vagabond is the only surviving example paired with its original purpose-built tractor. There is nothing else like it in the world. It didn't launch a product line. It didn't inspire a generation of competitors. It simply existed, fully realized, ahead of its time by 30 years, and then quietly got on with the work of proving that vision and engineering, when properly combined, can outlast almost everything else. Most vehicles are built to be replaced. The Vagabond was built to outlast everything around it, and for 53 years it did exactly that.